book gives us some insight into how the inner workings of the Trump administration and how they propose to handle the coronavirus pandemic was actually far worse than what we experienced publicly. So this book, Nightmare Scenario, talks about two occasions where Trump suggested quarantining US tourists, people traveling to the United States as tourists as the pandemic was really starting to become more and more of a problem. In fact, the book notes that he had suggested, don't we have an island that we own? Trump reportedly asked those assembled in the Situation Room in February of 2020 before the US outbreak would explode. What about Guantanamo? We import goods, we are not going to import a virus. He suggested that tourists in the United States should be sent to Guantanamo Bay. That's what he suggested, not once, but twice. That's what he suggested.
Yeah, by the way, when we were discussing Guantanamo, and we've been discussing it ever since it's been open, we told you that one of the problems is, in fact, the principal problem is not how we're treating those detainees, which is awful enough. There's been torture, and remember, the majority of them were innocent. They were gathered up for bounties. Some of them turned out to be, like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is actually one of the top organizers of 9/11, but the majority of them, we decided later, oops, they're innocent. Some of which we've let out, and some of which we still haven't let out.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we said, look, even though that is atrocious, that's actually not the number one problem. The number one problem is we've set up a lawless area that we control through martial law, right? So the military controls a piece of land in Cuba where we say no law applies. And so when you do that, can you put American citizens there? Well, yeah, of course you could, because the law doesn't apply. So, and now you had Donald Trump, Republican president, considering putting American citizens there. And then if you complain, well, sad day for you. There's no law there. So all there is martial law, meaning military law. We have the might, we have the guns, and there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. And so, look, as you see that piece and 1,000 other pieces, Trump was such a maniac that huge parts of his government would often ignore his questions, like commands, directives. They'd just be like, no, the guy's a maniac and we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna imprison American tourists in Guantanamo Bay, so let's move on, right?
It's insane.
But by the way, they're supposed to follow the president, right? I mean, you talk about deep state. No, there's top advisors, people he handpicked, like including his son-in-law. Oftentimes they'd be like, oh yeah, everybody knows the president's an idiot. Don't listen to him, right? But if they had listened to him, yeah, we would have put Americans in Guantanamo Bay, just like we told you.
No, I mean, we saw a little of the lunacy, right? And I say a little because the details in this book make it abundantly clear that his suggestions in combating the virus was even worse than we experienced publicly. I mean, the guy suggested injecting disinfectant in order to fight the symptoms of COVID. He did that in a press conference, and I thought, oh, it can't get any lower than this. But suggesting that US citizens be held in Guantanamo Bay rather than allowing them back in the United States if they've been traveling is insane. It's absolutely insane. And also, look, the very people who had issues with, and rightfully had issues with the way that Obama handled foreign policy, how Obama promised to close Guantanamo Bay and then proceeded to do absolutely nothing about Guantanamo Bay, left it open, right? Are they upset about this? Are they upset about this? That Trump would suggest not once, but on 2 different occasions that US citizens be held in Guantanamo Bay because of the very chance that they might have COVID through their travels. Anyway, I just think that's fascinating.
I know people are tired of hearing how stupid Donald Trump is, but 40% of the country thinks he's a genius. So look, if all of it didn't end it for you know the other suggestions that they ignored. So why don't we do 10 times the nuclear weapons we have? Well, it would bankrupt the country, literally. And what happened? I thought he was anti-war. At one time, he suggested nuking a hurricane, launching a nuclear weapon inside a hurricane to slow it. They had to tell him, no, that would actually spread the radiation further out. So, but if you're not convinced by any of that, we all saw on tape with our own eyes, he suggested injecting bleach into your body for coronavirus. if you're not done with him, I'm not having a conversation with rational people.
Right.
The only people who still support him are deeply, deeply, deeply irrational. So you think, oh, yeah, maybe we should inject bleach. Maybe that was a smart thing for the president to ask, by the way, many, many, many months into coronavirus. It wasn't just at the beginning. Even though, injecting Clorox into your lungs at the beginning would have made sense? No, the guy is a blithering idiot. The most interesting part of this is how deeply everyone in the White House knew it.
No, you're right, and that his own advisors served as the role that Congress should have been serving, which is checking him, right?
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that was going on in the White House because of all the public stupidity that was going on. But no, apparently privately, he had advisors that were keeping him away from some of the most insane suggestions. Another one is this. Remember, he loves putting incompetent people in charge of incredibly important efforts. So he was upset about testing because the more people get tested, the more you find out about cases in the United States, and high case counts made him look bad. So he said, testing is killing me, Trump reportedly exclaimed in a phone call to then Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar on March 18th, yelling so loudly that Azar's aides overheard every word. I'm going to lose the election because of testing. What idiot had the federal government do testing? Do you mean Jared? Azar responded. Just 5 days earlier, Kushner had vowed to take charge of a national testing strategy with the help of the private sector. And he was furious about that. This was gross incompetence to let the CDC develop a test, Trump reportedly said as he berated Azar. He just didn't want people to know the truth about how widespread COVID had already been at that point.
Look, if it was contained to the CDC, I could actually see a fact pattern where you say, oh no, he's referring to the test that the CDC created that turned out to be a flop and actually delayed us, right? So there's a scenario where you give him all of the benefit of the doubt and he comes out okay on that one sentence, okay? But guys, he didn't just leave it at that sentence. He said, why are we doing testing at all? We shouldn't be doing testing because it's killing me. Because his point was, the more you test, yes, we'll find out more, we'll have better resources to treat people who have it, less people will die, but it is my perception that it is going to hurt my political career. So I would rather have them die than hurt my political career by 1%. And then he thinks that's so obvious. He's like, what kind of an idiot? Listen to the scientists. How dare you listen to scientists and try to save people's lives? And by the way, look, we're always fair. I laughed out loud upon rereading the Jared Kushner line of, it was Jared, sir, right? Yeah. But if you're being fair, actually give a little bit of credit to Jared Kushner because he actually pushed for testing, which is the correct thing to do if you want to save lives.
Right.
And then Trump is furious at him. He's like, Jared got it right finally, God damn it, I can't fire him.
God, can you imagine that guy as your father-in-law? I mean, I'm not making any excuses for Jared Kushner. He's awful in his own ways. But to your point, Cenk, there was something else going on behind the scenes that we're now learning about, because while the Trump administration would have American citizens believe that wearing masks is ridiculous, remember they turned it into a huge culture war issue. Behind the scenes, Jared Kushner was trying to secure masks for Americans and was furious when there were delays in obtaining the masks. So these are the last two graphics. As Dan Diamond at the Washington Post writes, HHS Emergency Preparedness Chief Robert Kadlec, who had overseen the purchase of 600 million masks, took the plan in late March to Kushner, who exploded in anger, throwing his pen against the wall in frustration when he learned the masks would not arrive until June. You effing moron, Kushner reportedly said, we'll all be dead by June. So apparently they knew how important the masks were.
And apparently they knew how severe the outbreak was. Meanwhile, Trump's going on TV every single day, lying to you guys, telling you it's no big deal, it'll magically disappear. He literally said it will magically disappear 2 different times. Anybody having a conversation about Trump being intelligent, it's just sad. It's really, really sad. So now, back to the last couple of points here. That honestly prove what we've been saying for the last 4 or 5 years. Number one, I said to you that Trump's not really the president. There's two people who are directing almost all of the policy. And the two people were Steve Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, and Jared Kushner. They're the ones that were actually doing almost all of the policy. That is why Trump every once in a while finds out what his own policy is and then gets furious about it. He's like, who wrote this? Idiot, you're the president. You were supposed to do it, but you were watching Fox and Friends and drinking your Diet Coke.
Please, executive time.
Okay, executive time. And so you told your son-in-law, I don't know, you don't have any experience in this, and you actually sucked at the one thing you did, real estate. Why don't you run the country? Then you don't, and then he turns around, he's like, oh, Jared did something wrong, I'm mad, okay? And then the thing that I warned you about even before the 2016 election, during the 2016 election, was, look guys, he's a terrible guy, racist, all that stuff, right? But actually the number one problem is his incompetence. And we can't have someone in office this deeply incompetent. And as you read that entire profile of the book that's coming out with much more details, it's all Trump appointees going, total clown show, right? So nobody knows who's in charge because Trump's an idiot and didn't say, this guy is in charge of everything when it comes to coronavirus. He's like Mike Pence, head of the task force. Dr. Burse is the one coordinating the task force. Jared Kushner's secretly president. Mike Pence's chief of staff, who turns out to be a horrible guy. Mark Short, we knew that in general, but in this case, he's like, we don't need no stinking mask. He's one of the people, they wanted to hang Mike Pence anyway. But to give you a sense of how awful Mike Pence and his team were, and they joked around about, you don't need no stinking masks. It's gonna panic people if we send them free masks. They considered sending everybody masks. They could have saved thousands of lives.
Hundreds of thousands of lives,
and Mark Short didn't want to do it because he thought it looked silly, and he said, it looks like you're wearing underwear on your face. So these morons had no idea what they were doing, and they bungled the entire reaction partly because they didn't even know who was in charge. So they'd keep going, wait, is it Pence, is it Kushner, is it Burks, who the hell's in charge? And Trump's ordering Diet Coke, watching cable news. And that's why over 600,000 Americans died, because of their grotesque incompetence. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.